Now I just kind of wanted to show you the difference in inking up these stamps with these two kinds of ink so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And I'm just going to put a little puffy envelope that I happen to have next to me down here so that I get a little bit of cushion for the dye ink. And let me do the dye ink first. I'm going to use the Memento Purple. It's the grape jelly color. And I'm just going to stamp up the image. And it's always better, in my opinion, to take the ink pad to the stamp rather than the other way around. And I love these little dewdrops, these little the shape of it, because I get way more control in adding the ink to it. And hopefully you can see it's kind of splotchy on there. And you saw that I did put quite a bit on there. Let me hold it down, press firmly, and let it up. That one did not do very well, so let's try that again. And this time I'll try it without the cushion, see if that makes a difference. So dye ink again, minus the cushion. There's all that ink again on there. Press firmly. Obviously you don't want to move the stamp because that'll mess up your image. That's a lot better. So there's the dye ink. You can see it's dry. Okay, let me clean this off really quickly. I use baby wipes to clean my stamps. And you can use those, or you can use, you know, a stamp cleaner, that kind of thing. But if you do use baby wipes, please make sure you are using alcohol-free ones. And preferably probably scent-free, because the chemicals in that could break down the stamps over time. So I'm going to use the purple Versamagic. Okay. Stamp on the ink. And I want to make sure it's good and covered. And you can see on this one how different this ink looks on top. It's not splotchy, it's like a nice solid coverage. Isn't that gorgeous? And then press it down. And there you go. Nice solid image, but doesn't dry right away. It takes just a little bit longer. So that's kind of the differences on the solid stamps. And I'm sure you might have noticed that this particular stamp is got some discoloring on it. And that's from a variety of different inks. Some ink pads discolor the stamp and some don't. As long as you're cleaning off all the ink, that discoloration is not going to affect anything, so don't worry about that. So let's do a solid stamp. Let's bring back the cushion for the dye ink and try it out. There's that purple dye ink on a cushion. And we'll just stamp it right here. And there you go. So not bad. Let's do it without the cushion just to see if there's any big difference. I know a lot of people like to use some sort of foam or cushion when they're stamping. For me, it just really depends on the stamped image and the ink I'm using. Sometimes you do get a better image with a cushion. So there's both of them. With the cushion on the left, without on the right. They're pretty similar, but I think the right side is probably a little bit better. So now let me do the chalk ink on that one. And same purple color. Okay. Pick that up. There you go. And I kind of shimmied that one, so the line's going to look a little similar, or a little thicker, sorry. But still does a really great color, really good coverage. Let me try that one more time, see if I can avoid moving it. These chalk ink pads, I will say, are, or feel like they're a lot, I don't know, I guess I'd say like juicier, for lack of a better term. And so I have a little bit of a harder time keeping the stamped image still. I might even use my stamp press in the future. Yeah, I kind of shimmied it again. But anyway, you can see it's got nice coverage on there. And see, they're both still a little bit wet. So obviously if you want to use that chalk ink, you're going to want to stamp on there and then put it aside for just a little while. About 2 minutes is what it looked like on that solid flower example that I showed you before. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to show you, because there are, I know, a lot of people out there who are using their Filofax and they're wanting to start stamping on that as well. So I thought I would just very quickly show you the dye ink versus the chalk ink. This is just some a diary page I didn't use because I didn't have a Filofax back at this time period. So here's the dye, and then I'm going to stamp it off again. It's kind of a light one, but basically you have the first stamped image up there and the second generation one down there. And on the back you can see there's really some bleed through with that first generation dye ink. Let me pull the chalk ink over and try that on there as well. See what we have there. Okay, so here's the chalk ink, a second one of the chalk ink. So there you have both of those, first generation, second generation. Okay, turn it over, let's put it down. So you can see both of the first generation stamps came through, but the chalk ink is definitely lighter, and neither of the second generations can be seen. So that would always be an option. I mean, this one is pretty dark, so you could still probably be using it. Like if you wanted to do that little Muji stamp or some other little checklist stamp, you could probably do it with like a second generation. You know, stamp off once to the side, stamp the image a second time on your Filofax paper, and that would probably work. So hopefully that helps for those of you who are getting started in inking, or those of you who are using your Filofax and want to start stamping in that. I did want to say just a couple other things. There are some other inks out there besides these dye and chalk inks that I've shown you, and the pigment inks that I've talked about. There are some that are maybe classed in one of these categories but have a few other properties to them. For example, distress ink. Distress ink is usually considered a kind of dye ink, but it is water-based, so it will react with water. If you guys haven't used these, you can for distressing pages, for watercoloring, things like that. It will react with water, as opposed to, say, this Memento ink, which once it's dry is waterproof, so that won't run. You could put both of these on the same piece of paper, let it dry, hit a little bit of it with some water, and basically the distress ink would be the only one that would react with it. In addition to that, there are some what people call like specialty inks. For example, a solvent-based ink would be StazOn. StazOn works on pretty much every surface and would be an ink that you could use on that acrylic paper, and it would, after a little period of time, dry and you wouldn't be able to wipe it off. The only issue with some of these is that oftentimes they're harder to clean off stamps. You might have to even use the StazOn cleaner. So keep that in mind. And some of these, to me, have a little bit of a smell to them. So I don't have a ton of them. I also don't stamp on acrylic stuff or other things besides paper that often. There's also what is called a hybrid ink, and I have a few of those on these little ink pads. And basically this is kind of something that has the properties of both a pigment and a dye ink, and it can be stamped on pretty much every surface as well. It dries a little faster than pigment ink, but it's still a little bit slow. And along with the Distress ink, the images aren't totally crisp when you stamp them. These two inks are not one, if you want to just do a traditional stamping and you want a clear, crisp image, I would not be using either one of these. Okay, that's not what they're made for. And then there's also my VersaFine that I've talked about. This is considered a dye ink, but it's oil-based and water-soluble. So the dye itself is opaque like a pigment, but it dries fast like a dye. And because it is, well, I shouldn't say because of it, I assume that's one of the reasons that these larger ink pads can be kind of pricey. So that's why you'll see in every other color besides black, I have the little ones, because it's like, I don't know, I think a third or a fourth of the cost of the big one. Then there's Hero Arts Shadow Ink that I like to use. It has some of its own unique qualities. And again, on a lot of these, if you read the back, it will give you a lot of information. This particular ink is waterproof for watercolors and markers. It dries permanently and quickly. And it has what they call subtle washes of mid-tone color, ideal for backgrounds and stamp layering. So I use this a lot of times when I'm using those big background stamps of mine. I don't, again, use these typically for if I want a crisp stamp image because, as I showed you right here, this is what you get. It gets a little splotchy. But if you put this on a background stamp, it's a really cool effect. And then lastly, you have embossing ink. You either have traditional embossing ink pads that you can get, or you have Versamark. And both of them are slow drying, which allows you to apply the embossing powder. And I will be doing a video about embossing a little bit later in this series of videos. So that's all the information I have. I do want to give you guys a couple, what I hope is helpful hints. First of all, if you're going to invest in ink or try a new ink, if there's an option to buy a smaller ink pad, buy the smaller ink pad. Try it out, see if you like it, before you decide whether or not you want to invest in the big one. I don't have a lot of big ink pads anymore because, number one, it's a storage issue. These things are much more difficult to store, and they're much more costly. I would much rather have, say, 3 little ones of different colors than one big one. So that's why I usually get the little ones. And for storage, I had these little art bin containers that I was using for something else I didn't need anymore. And so I stick them in this one. And then I also have this kind. And then I just fit them in a drawer, and it's super quick and easy to get to them. And, you know, I just prefer that. I think that's basically all the information I had to share with you guys. Again, this is just based on my experience and what I have picked up from watching videos and reading magazines and all that good stuff. If you have any questions on anything that I haven't covered, let me know, leave them down below, and I will try and get back to you as soon as possible. The other thing that I wanted to say is that I do have a few of these Just the Basic videos planned out that I'm going to try and do. I'm hoping once a week until I'm done. If there's any topic that you would like to see me cover, leave that down below as well. And if it's something that I have any information about, I will be happy to include it on my list if it's not already there. And if you guys have any information on inks that you would like to share, on the ones that you liked best, you know, feel free to comment down below. Just please remember, we're looking for constructive information and constructive criticisms. I will tell you that in having done this, I really like this Versamagic chalk ink. I will be getting more of it. Joann's has it on sale almost all the time, online and in their stores. It's very affordable, so I will be getting some more of that. For dye ink, it just depends on what I'm doing, but I go for VersaFine for sentiments, and probably the Memento ink for other things, if I'm, you know, Copic coloring, things like that. They have a great range of colors, and I think that's it. I think you got my like 2-cent version of all of this information. Again, comments and questions down below, and I hope this helped somebody. And if you want me to try and cover anything else, leave that information below. And I hope you guys are having a great day where you're at. Bye.